From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the latest with the Broncos head coaching search. The Broncos have already conducted interviews with Jim Harbaugh, virtually of course, as well as Ejiro Evero, the Broncos defensive coordinator. And now, Ben, sort of the rest of these guys are going to probably be interviewed into next week, and that's based on the NFL rules.
Well, yeah, there's some timing in when you can and can't interview different people, some rules for all that. So I wouldn't read anything too much into the order of who's being interviewed what other than availability and that they could do certain things. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh was somebody that, you don't have to get any rules for. He's not currently in the NFL, so real easy to get that one done. Also, I would say don't read anything into the brevity of these virtual interviews. These are get-to-know-you interviews, get a few things out of the way, get a sense of the person before they have an official real interview. It's going to be a 2-round process, maybe a 3-round process if more than one guy really impresses in that. So, I think that up front they want to get a sense of who the person is and then be able to kind of tailor their interview and their questions to that second round of full in-person interviews.
All right, let's dial in on these two candidates, the one that they've already executed the interviews. And, of course, Evero is going to be interviewing with the Colts and Texans as well, at least right now. So let's dial in on Jim Harbaugh and the reason wwhy Jim Harbaugh, in your opinion, would make sense.
Well, he's got a pedigree of winning everywhere he's ever gone. He's certainly a guy that knows how to be successful. I think the question with Harbaugh is longevity. A lot of people have stated that his coaching style is probably better suited for the collegiate game as he tends to wear people out. He's kind of all over the map. Randomly, he'll want to, change practices up or change up what they're doing. I think it's a good thing because it keeps people on their toes and breaks you out of monotony. But at the same time, in this league, everything is so structured that when something is different from what you've planned and people have made plans, they do get resentful at times. I think Harbaugh is kind of an interesting individual personally, and that may grate on people after a while. But, again, he's got the track record of winning, and you'll put up with a lot as long as you're winning.
Well, and he's one of the CEO-type coaches, right? So it is a lot about the staff he puts together, too.
Yeah, offensive background, obviously, former quarterback and offensive background, but really is kind of a manager and a CEO type. I listed he and Sean Payton as the offensive coaches, out of this search, and I think that's fair, but he is a little bit more CEO type like his brother than probably Sean Payton. I mean, Sean Payton is a CEO type too.
Right, but he's not going to be calling plays. He's not coming
some of them. He will do some. He'll put together the script and he'll call some of the plays.
Right, but
he'll also turn a lot of that over to either probably like a Greg Roman or a David Shaw, something like that.
He's not coming in to be the sequencer. He's not coming in to be the full-time sequencer like we saw with Nathaniel Hackett.
Well, yeah, it won't be as much. He'll be doing more CEO stuff, but he will take stretches where he'll take the play sheet and he'll be calling the plays. There will be stretches where he does that in game.
Is that a positive or negative? Because we saw in this last game with Michigan and their loss, boy, they had that Philly special or that version of a Philly special that was just a complete disaster on the 4th and short and 4th and goal. I'm not saying that's all on him, but the point being is sometimes when it's a coach taking the reins like that, it can be a backfired moment.
Can be. I think that everybody has their hits and their misses. If it had gone off, then everybody would be praising Jim Harbaugh. So I'm not going to hold one play against him. It's about body of work. And again, the work has been successful, whether that's him calling the plays, whether that's guys he's hired calling the plays. It's been successful.
Oh, there's no question about it. And I think you said it perfectly. Everywhere he's gone, they've won. And he is a guy that sets the culture, right? For better or worse. Now, there are some people, like you said, that his style is a very matter of fact. He's a tough coach. And he can be a little bit of calculating at times. And I think that there's a little bit of a contrast, of course, to what they just had with Nathaniel Hackett. You wonder if that's part of this conversation of like, okay, we saw with Nathaniel Hackett, it was a little bit too much of buddy-buddy. Now we need to go a little bit in the opposite direction, not full the opposite direction, but you're going with experience of coaching. You're also going with a guy that's going to be more of a tougher coach. And for a team that lacked a lot of discipline, especially when it came to penalties, maybe that's a reason why he's one of their top candidates.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that's one of them. I mean, he does bring some things to the table, but I think it's really more about not exactly your resume or your style, but really about what you bring to the table in terms of having had success. And every single person that they're interviewing here has at least had success in one component or another. And so I think that's about that. It's about capturing that success and seeing about how to import that to to Denver. I think they don't really want to break in somebody without experience, and that, they have two guys on this list that don't have any experience whatsoever, Jiro Evero and D'Amico Ryans. But I still think you bring them in and pick their brain a little bit and kind of see versus the guys that have experience, and maybe those guys have some fresh ideas that the guys who've been there and done that before and set in their ways don't have.
Oh, I agree. And I'd even go as far to say that there are some other guys that I'd like the Broncos to talk to before this thing's all said and done. We don't know the entire list just yet, but this is what we're working with so far. So for Jim Harbaugh, I think there's a lot of people out there that sort of see him as the slam dunk candidate. I think he raises the floor of the team almost immediately, and because that's what he's done everywhere else he's gone. So you think that he would establish a little bit of that here, but once again, it's a guy that's kind of bounced back and forth to college and pro, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're wondering once he gets here if he's missing the fact that he's not in college anymore, and those kinds of things. And of course, there's the other part of this, which has been discussed quite a bit, is his statements, though they've been a little bit tepid at times, or read as tepid, where he says, I don't really know the future, and I expect to be coaching at Michigan enthusiastically. But he says those things. I think some people read into that is this is him telling Michigan, hey, if you come at me with the right price and you give me enough of a bump, then I would love to come back here. But simultaneously, if you're not going to do that, then I have to at least explore my options.
Well, yeah, and like I've said all along, if Michigan does show him the respect, and that's respect with a dollar sign instead of an S, I think that he would go back to Michigan. But Michigan has been reluctant to do that. They didn't do it last year. He would have taken the Minnesota job if they'd offered. So here we are again, and Jim Harbaugh's like, well, look, here's what I'm worth. This is what I bring to the table. If you're not going to meet that, I'll find someone who will.
All right, so let's talk about Jiro Evero. Of course, we know him from being the defensive coordinator here in Denver, 1 year defensive coordinator. So we're talking kind of a limited experience as far as executive opportunities, but that doesn't mean that he can't be a very, very good coach, a very good head coach. And most of the players you talk to in the building, most of the people that work with him just rave about his communication. They rave about his leadership. He certainly seems like the kind of guy that will one day get that opportunity. But for the Broncos, who have come off 3 straight first-time coaches, this is one of those things. It's like, okay, I want to see what he thinks went wrong last year. I want to see how he would do it differently, but I don't know if we're at the right time for him to be the head coach just yet. But why would he make sense if they decide to go that direction?
There's continuity. He's beloved. He got more out of a defense that everybody expected to take a step back after Vic Fangio left. He knows the personnel, knows what went wrong, what went right, and how to probably hit the ground running to attack that. I think what he has to do is lay out a plan for the offensive side of the football.
Right.
Now, Jiro Evero has worked on the offensive side of the ball. As a matter of fact, he was an offensive assistant for Jim Harbaugh, of all people. So he knows how to work the offensive side of the ball. I think picking his brain about that, I think, will be invaluable. He'll have a chance to sell himself as the guy there. I don't know that he necessarily is going to be the guy that gets the job, but he'll certainly have the opportunity to make his case. I think that they very much want to keep him. I think they very much want to keep him as a defensive coordinator. He's going to interview, obviously, in Indy and Houston, and I don't think he's going to get either one of those jobs, but he'll have a chance to make his case there either. And so, I think that if you are the Denver Broncos, you want to try to keep him. You look at the staff and the people they're bringing in. Raheem Morris knows Evero dating all the way back to Tampa, in L.A., and then dating back to Tampa. Jim Harbaugh knows Evero from all 4 years he was in San Francisco. And Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris was Dan Quinn's right-hand man, knows Evero through that connection. So a lot of the guys that are being brought in are very familiar with the Jiro Evero. D'Amico Ryans, I believe, played on a defense that Evero was working with. So, I mean, all those guys have at least some experience outside of Sean Payton, who wouldn't be keeping him, would be bringing Vic Fangio back, at least know or have some experience with the Jiro Evero. And you can tell the respect that they have for him by how these interviews have laid out.
I really think that's a fantastic point. And it's definitely one we've talked about on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show. Speaking of specifically the hope that they can keep him in-house. I mean, he's under contract either way. If he gets promoted to be a head coach, say at Indy or Houston, well, the Broncos are going to get some compensatory picks for that. But more than anything, I think that they believe he really is a star, and they do believe that he is as a positive add to this organization for all the frustrations this last year, especially with the coaching staff. Well, Evero is certainly one of the positives. Now we're seeing over the last 2 games, you saw Outen, maybe he's a sequencer, maybe there's something to develop there. So I know that in the end, we're going to look back at the Nathaniel Hackett era, and there's going to be a lot more frustration than positivity. But in the end, some of these coaches that are in the building right now, the guys that you'd actually think would be worth building continuity around, they wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, as much as we like to bag on Hackett, now that he's gone, I mean, he did bring us Greg Dulcich. He did bring us Ejiro Evero. Those are at least a couple of positives that we can take away from this. And who knows with Evero? I think he's going to be back as defensive coordinator and probably be a hot name for the head coaching cycle the next year and bring the Broncos some compensatory draft picks, which would be nice because since they've been low on picks the last couple of years.
Yeah. Last thing here on Evero. If the Broncos did decide to move that direction, I think I like what you talked about there, because then it would be sort of an acknowledgement of not everything was broken, because we know from the defensive side of the ball, they again put up stellar numbers. A lot of people thought they were going to take a step back. I love that point that you made, because this year it was going to be about the offense and the defense was going to take a step back. Instead, the defense in some ways got better, and it was the offense really that actually took the step back. So it's a fascinating sort of dynamic. And those are the kinds of things that build your resume. Alfred Williams and I were getting into a conversation, an argument about him deciding not to take the interim coach opportunity. And Alfred says he kind of holds that against him a little bit, as far as, hey, you were given a chance and you turned it down. So how should fans view the fact that he turned that down?
I think it's not a negative. I disagree with Al on this one. I think Ejiro Evero looked at this and said it's a lose-lose situation for me. I take the interim job and we don't win. I have a blemish on my resume. Let me continue to be the defensive coordinator and do what I do best. And you're going to interview me for head coach anyway after this. So I think Ejiro Evero played it smart. I think there was a loyalty factor in not wanting to follow your, imagine if your best friend gets fired and you just, they're like, well, you're going to do the job now. It's not a lot of people are going to do that. You can have loyalty to your friends. So I think that I think it was a combination of things. And Evero knew it's like, this is a lose-lose situation for me. It takes away the defense suddenly drops off if I step away and put it in somebody else's hands. Let me continue to do what I do, and we'll have a fair interview for this afterwards.
I don't know what you're talking about. If you were fired as insider tomorrow, I'd be right in there talking to the bosses.
Broncos and NFL insider Ryan Edwards.
I'd be right there. Can you imagine me like,
next day it's the imagery is scrubbed everywhere.
Right, exactly. All right. We'll continue this conversation next time. It's Benjamin Allbright. I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's going to win it! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.